introducing Arthur Stamoulis. He is the Executive Director of Citizens Trade Campaign, and this is a national coalition, national network of family farm, labor, social justice, faith groups that believe trade is not a means, an ends unto itself, but a means in which we all should be able to reap the benefits as workers and be protective of our environment. So while Arthur has a national lens, he also is involved in the Oregon Fair Trade Coalition, which is our sister group. So he very much knows and understands the issues here in the Pacific Northwest. So he's going to offer some comments for us. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Kristen. Thanks to the Washington Fair Trade Coalition for organizing this, for all of you for taking the time off to be here. I just want to say 2 comments about the photos that were just handed around, because I've seen the full presentation that these come from. The first is that the strikes with 170,000 workers in 2006 happened 12 times that year, basically once a month. People brought out on strike. And then just a highlight in between, in 2008, when the movement expanded well beyond just labor, 700,000 people were in the streets doing massive candlelight vigils. So South Koreans have a lot to teach us about organizing, certainly. Citizen trade campaigns, opinion of the largest free trade agreement since NAFTA is one you could probably expect. We expect this deal to have very similar effects as NAFTA on the U.S. workforce, meaning more job loss and contributing to more wage stagnation. Kyung-Ran talks a lot in her full presentations about this not just being about the number of jobs, but the quality of jobs, which I very much agree with. I'm going to start with the number of jobs from the U.S. domestic perspective, but then talk about the quality of jobs as well. If you hear what's coming out of the White House about this trade deal, why they're doing it, they talk about exports, that this is about increasing exports, and certainly it will increase exports. The number that the White House has frequently used is that the Korea Free Trade Agreement will support, not create, but support 70,000 jobs in the U.S. They don't really spell out how they came about this number, but we think we have a pretty good idea of where they got it. The U.S. International Trade Commission is the federal agency that studies trade policy. They often produce reports for both Congress and the White House on the potential impacts of trade agreements. We believe they routinely overestimate the benefits of trade deals, but they're sort of the official body in this country for looking at these things. And the USITC predicts that the Korea Free Trade Agreement will increase U.S. exports to South Korea by 10 to $11 billion when the agreement is in full effect. All the tariffs have been reduced. So you look at that, all right, 10 to $11 billion sort of number. In April of 2010, the International Trade Administration released an estimate that $150,000 of exports is roughly equivalent to one American job. And so you take 10 to 11 billion, you divide it by, 150,000, you get, 66,666 to 73,000, roughly 70,000 jobs. So that's our understanding of where the White House is getting this number, that the Korea FTA will support 70,000 American jobs. The White House is ignoring 2 things. Well, they're ignoring more than 2 things, but in terms of this number, they're ignoring 2 things. The first is that the USITC finds that, while the FTA will increase exports to South Korea by 10 to 11 billion, more than half of that increase will be a diversion of existing exports to other countries like China, Indonesia, et cetera. So that, the direct sort of increase in existing exports is only going to be 4.8 to 5.3 billion, according to the USITC, which again routinely overestimates the benefits of these deals. So if your goal in increasing is number one, just to increase total exports and jobs as a result of exports, well, already you've cut that number by half. But more important than that, they're ignoring a big thing. They're looking just at exports, as free traders almost always do, and completely ignoring the impact on imports, which you must do. And just as exports are associated with job creation, increased imports are typically associated with job displacement. And the USITC predicts that the overall effect of this trade agreement on the U.S. global trade deficit will be an increase in our trade deficit, meaning a net job loss. The ITC doesn't actually offer job loss numbers themselves. Their model for how they study this is very complicated. It's called a CGE model. And built into their assumption is that you don't lose a total number of jobs. Jobs shift from one sector to another. So they don't offer us a job loss number, but they're certainly telling us that the deficit is going to increase, which we all know means job displacement, certainly. Another non-government think tank, the Economic Policy Institute, which is a DC-based think tank associated with the labor movement in this country, they predict that the net result of this trade agreement within 7 years will be 159,000 jobs lost. And so if you look at, a lot of the labor movement's reports, on this, even ours, you'll see that number, 159,000 jobs. Of course, that's because we're honest people and we incorporate both the imports and the exports to come up with that net number. If you look at their study in detail, they actually predict that Korean imports within 7 years will be displacing 888,000 American jobs, a far higher number, which, if you're one of those 888,000, and you get a job in a new sector, say at Walmart or wherever, maybe you're not so excited that, hey, a new job was created after mine was destroyed. But those are sort of the numbers that are out there in terms of the impact on jobs. The USITC study, though, getting back to that, while it doesn't give you job estimates, it does predict, which sectors of the economy will benefit and which will lose as a result of this, where the job shifts will happen. And what the ITC predicts is that the agricultural sector will gain jobs. Certainly, the ag industry is important. We don't want to suggest it's not. But looking at even the meat packing industry, which I don't know for certain. My assumption is that it pays better than some of the farmhand jobs. That pays, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 36.7% less than the average private sector job in this country. So those are the jobs that are going to be created, low-paying jobs. The jobs that are going to be destroyed are in manufacturing, in particular in electronics. Those are jobs that, according to the BLS, pay 40.5% higher than the average private sector jobs. So not only are we seeing a net job loss, but we're seeing a shift from high-wage jobs to low-wage jobs. And certainly in the Pacific Northwest, while both those sectors of the economy are very, very important, the high-tech jobs are what we're told is our future. And we're selling that future out under this trade deal. And not only our jobs, but our children's jobs, if this moves forward. So I know we're running late on time. I could talk more about labor standards. I could talk more about the extraordinary investor rights provisions in this deal, the financial deregulation. We could talk about the politics, but I think I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you, Arthur.